Number 10. Dark Hulk. Within the pages of Incredible Hulk 371 lies Shanzar, the Sorcerer Supreme of his dimension, known as Strange World. He killed and assimilated everyone in his own world, and now he's branching out. However, to enter another dimension, he needed a strong body to host him. This he found in the Hulk. Reaching across dimensions through mystic portals, he grabs Hulk with expanding tentacles and takes mystical command of the Green Behemoth. Inside the Hulk's mind, Shanzar discovers the Hulk has a mysterious barred door in his mind, and behind it is something so powerful it frightens Shanzar. Luckily for Hulk, Doctor Strange and Namor team up with Dr. Banner's Psyche and working together free the Hulk from the sinister sorcerer's control. Later, Hulk finds out his wife has lost their baby during the pregnancy and she's become a nun. It's weird and you definitely need to read it.
Number 9. Batman vs. the Incredible Hulk. I think the crazy thing here is that Batman takes on the Hulk in a fight and wins. Also, Joker somehow convinced the Hulk to fight Batman by making fun of the way Batman looks and arguing that his matching green hair makes him and Hulk one and the same. Birds of a feather. Batman takes on the Hulk in a fisticuff style fight and still somehow manages to win, even though it's been established in the past that even super-powered beings have hurt themselves just from striking the Hulk on both his outside and even while attempting to infiltrate his insides. In the end, Batman almost gets crushed by the Hulk but escapes his grasp by successfully discombobulating him. Boom on the ears. Boxing the ears of your opponent might work normally, but I'm not super convinced that this should work on the Hulk, who is often known for his intense durability, which often leaves him unfazed by many unexpected attacks. Also, I feel like if you're holding someone here, like you're probably expecting someone to hit you on the head if their hands are free. It's just, you should expect it. When Hulk uses his massive lung capacity to avoid breathing in sleeping gas, a swift kick to his solar plexus manages to force him to breathe out and inhale the sleeping gas, passing out. It also features a ridiculous Batman pose when Hulk attempts to crush a very graceful looking Batman. Batman's like, ugh. I'm like, why is this like a weird lover pose? What's happening in this panel?
Number 8. What if General Ross became the Hulk? In this story, we find General Thaddeus Ross hassling Dr. Bruce Banner about why his new invention, the Gamma Bomb, is having so many delays. As the two of them are arguing, an assistant named Igor spots a teenager on the bomb's test site. Ross is already pretty angry, so he sets out to yell at the youngster to get off of the premises, but then finds the G-Bomb countdown is still activated, and when the bomb detonates, he transforms into a monstrous gray Hulk. Regaining consciousness, he decides to just head home, and he gives his wife Betty a serious fright. In a condensed tragedy, he basically ends up hurling a tank away into the air, and later discovers it landed on his house and killed his wife. If that wasn't bad enough, he later breaks down and begs Bruce Banner to help him to fix the problem, but Bruce ends up just shooting him in the head. It's a really nice shoe on the other foot kind of moment.
Number 7. Job security. When it comes to Hulk stories and personas, one of my favorite in terms of the strangest but most memorable is his time as Joe Fixit. Joe Fixit is one of Hulk's personas that is not as dim-witted in terms of personality, but is also much more self-serving than some of the others. Joe Fixit is a gray Hulk persona who often likes wearing really nice suits. We first get introduced to him in Incredible Hulk issue 347, but the story I'm talking about comes to us from the next issue 348. It's here that Fixit picks up a weird weakness to sunlight until Absorbing Man absorbs that weakness near the end of the story, curing the Hulk while simultaneously trying to actually absorb the Hulk's power. Didn't work out for him. Though in a bizarre twist, this just helps Fixit in their fight. I also love that Fixit is just super popular with all the ladies in the comics. It's so strange, but it's so excellent. Also, Joe Fixit can be a pretty stand-up person, so I guess I get it. And those sweet, sweet suits. Fixit makes a pretty entertaining appearance as well in the early Wolverine Volume 2 issues. Actually, I believe he shows up throughout all of that run of Wolverine. Personally, issue number 8 from that early story with him is one of my favorites.
Number 6. What if the Beast and the Thing continued to mutate? Volume 1, issue 37. When the Thing is being mutated from Virus X in the normal timeline, Captain America tells him about MODOK's base, but in this tale, the Thing takes off before he gets a chance to do so. So Captain America and Giant Man raid MODOK's base on their own, then they get the antidote that Bill can now use to cure his cancer. Ben reaches this point when he's evolving and he ends up releasing all of this cosmic energy that 1 cured himself of Virus X and 2 cured Alicia's blindness. Double win. Yes. Grimm is happy with the family, and the newly cured Giant Man takes Ben's spot on the Fantastic Four. It's good. This is a good one. We got one. Nice. Number 5. What if the Avengers had never been? Now, with all of these multiverse stories beginning in the MCU, it feels like the Avengers have never been further apart. It's exciting, but also a little concerning. This What If was actually the first What If issue with a major death, just 3 issues in. They're going for it. So we start off with the Hulk, and instead of smashing and hitting, he's dashing and quitting. He wants nothing to do with the team. So Rick Jones is sent to look for the Green Goliath, but he ends up being held hostage, where Tony Stark has to now come to the rescue. Now they make it back to the mansion, but Namor and Hulk want more. They challenge Earth's mightiest to the fight for their lives. Now Iron Man makes suits for Hank, Jan, and Rick, but they can't control the suits. It's too much for them, so they stay in retirement. So Stark powers up his own suit to the max, and then some more, so it's a lot of power going on, almost unobtainable. But then when the rest of the team finally do show up to the battle in Stark's other suits, Hank takes a hard hit. So Tony has to then transfer his suit's energy, that fat energy, in order to keep Hank alive. So even in this What If, Tony still throws his life down for others. How sweet. Number 4. What if Professor X had become the Juggernaut? In this reality, Professor X is the one who becomes Juggernaut and gets buried in the Temple of Cyttorak. Now this caused him to go down a completely different path when it comes to the X-Men, because after this, well, he never created the X-Men, so now the Fantastic Four has to go against Magneto. So after Professor X Juggernaut head digs his way out, he discovers his telepathy was now much stronger with the added powers. What a treat. I mean, not really. He ends up taking over the country with his own X-Men posse to enforce these anti-human laws. Cyclops even sides with Magneto at this point because he's like, okay, at least this guy can block Xavier's telepathy. And it all comes down to this final confrontation with Cyclops and Xavier. They're battling it out on Asteroid M, and Cyclops is trying to remind Xavier about the vision, the original dream, with humans and mutants living together in perfect harmony. Doesn't that sound lovely? And then before he could really consider it, the ground beneath him exploded and he got launched into space forever. Oof! Number 3. What if Loki had found the hammer of Thor? The final issue of Volume 1 of What If, again, something we're kind of close to seeing in the MCU, especially with Loki Season 2 being confirmed. These timelines are about to be really enjoyable, and we might get a hint of this, I think. So Donald Blake ends up not finding the hammer because Loki tossed it into the woods, and then the Saturnians wiped out Donald. So Thor wakes up in the land of the dead, memory not included. This is all bad for Thor. It's not so much Loki using the hammer, he just alters the hammer's location, and then Thor's altered future is now a stressful one. Number 2. What if Spider-Man joined the Fantastic Four? Okay, with John Watts directing the newest Spider-Man trilogy for the MCU and the upcoming MCU Fantastic Four reboot, this next What If might not seem that impossible. The first ever issue of What If finds Pete with a number 5 on his chest. The Fantastic Five has a ring to it. I kind of love the idea already. So Pete was low on cash, so he figured, you know what, I'm gonna break into the Baxter Building and straight up force an audition for Marvel's First Family. So Sue recruits Peter, and the team is formidable. They're great, they're solid. They're so good that Sue doesn't even feel like there's a need for her on the team anymore. There's always something sad. Don't do it, Sue. She ends up choosing Namor as her other half, even joining him in his kingdom under the sea. Now, she did love Reed as well, but her departure from the team just made it work better with the fishy guy. Now, if you want to see more of that altered storyline, because it is quite intriguing, jump ahead 20 issues once you're done this epic kickoff. And finally, coming in at number 1, what if somebody else besides Spider-Man had been bitten by the radioactive spider? This is perhaps one of my favorite what ifs because I genuinely have thought about what would happen if I was Spider-Man. I work for Top 10 Nerd, of course I'm going to daydream about this. Thing is though, I'm afraid of heights, so it wouldn't exactly be smooth sailing. But I can dream, right? Even in the Marvel Universe, other big names can't handle the webs. In this What If, we see Flash Thompson, Betty Brant, and John Jameson each get a swing at the sticky life. So Flash gets bit, and then he decides to take a crack at professional wrestling with the new muscles and all. Now, he may have underestimated his strength because he kind of accidentally killed the guy. You should have tapped. Oops. Next up, Betty Brant gets bit, and I have to admit her costume is for sure the most stylish. Very good, makes for great Instagram posts, sure. But when she runs out of web fluid making TikToks, the thief who took Uncle Ben's life was easily able to get away. She was like... And finally, we see John Jameson's turn, and he goes out like a hero. He tries to stop a space shuttle from crashing, and it's a lot harder than it looks. If you're not Pete, just don't even try, honestly. Kicking off the list at number 10, Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe by Cullen Bunn. So this issue was released in August 2012, and just the front cover alone, you already want to take a peek inside. So what's going on here? What's the story? Why does Wade want everybody dead? Well, when the X-Men put Wade into the Ravencroft Asylum in attempts to heal his insanity, of course the Doctor wasn't too good at handling such a task. That, and also it's Deadpool, so things are bound to go south. So the Doctor actually ended up being Psycho Man, of course, so he brainwashed Wade in hopes to shut down all of his inner voices. It worked, but the only downside, those voices were now replaced with voices that were encouraging him to, you guessed it, kill everybody in the Marvel Universe. So right off the bat, this series draws you in. It opens up with the Fantastic Four facing off with Wade, literally facing off. Reed Richards' face is all rubbery, it's melting. Sue has to watch Deadpool kill Johnny before meeting her own peril, and then that's just in the first few pages alone. And then the Watcher is here as well. He ends up taking us back to the beginning and how it all started with Dr. Psycho and all that jazz. It's honestly a really fun run. I mean, not for the faint of heart, but easily makes our list. And before we go on to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and toss us a thumbs up just right down there below, because it helps us out so much here at the studio. Thank you so much for watching. You guys are the best. Okay, now back to some Deadpool adventures. Number 9. All New Wolverine. So we branch out now to issue 31 of All New Wolverine, written by Tom Taylor and Marco Failla. We see the pairing of Deadpool and Gabby/Honey Badger. So Gabby is out to try and save sloths. So they roll up to this animal research lab and break into testing hall A. And Wade warns Gabby that these places are just no good and that they can be pretty distressing the way that they do these tests on animals. And upon arrival, they find zombie bunnies. Yeah, and then after a few moments of awe, it quickly turns into Fruit Ninja in real life. It's disgusting. There's knives and things everywhere. It's exactly what you would expect. And then of course we meet the zombie sloth, which is so slow Wade decides he has enough time to hit up the vending machine. It all goes up in flames, literally, and in a good way, when they run into Laura and they finish off the evil animal testing lab for good. So if you're an animal lover, you'll hate and love this issue at the same time. Number 8. A Kiss, a Curse, a Cure. So this story comes right from Deadpool and Death Annual 1998. So at first Deadpool didn't have a backstory, right? He was just this mercenary, and now he has like many backstories. He has like 5 backstories now. And amongst them is this classic. Bringing in a lot of the same bells from the 2016 Deadpool origin movie, we see Wade as a mercenary who gets diagnosed with cancer, so he joins the Canadian Weapon X program in order to attempt to heal him from said cancer. Now, of course, he ends up getting the healing factor, making him similar to Wolverine. Now, this of course is said to affect his brain, hence the crazy thoughts. And of course, death. There's a lot of death goodness in here. See, we didn't get to see her in the movie, so if you feel like you want a little more weird sprinkled into that origin story that we saw in the movie, A Kiss, a Curse, a Cure is a must read and a good starting point. Number 7. The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. Deadpool Volume 3, issues 15 to 19. Created by Posen and Duggan, we find a little more heart in this Deadpool story. I mean, the pop culture references are there, of course, and it's a good time, but for the most part, this 5-parter leaves you in the feels. You get emotional. We see Deadpool as a hero with Wolverine and Captain America after he had survived a program. So this unlikely trio heads to Korea and discovers that Deadpool's body parts were being used to mix with X-Men DNA, and then they're forced to serve, having their significant others used as hostages. So it's all bad, basically. So they would put Wade down, they'd put him to sleep, and then they'd steal his organs. Nasty stuff. So this man named Butler behind the whole operation is trying to do the same to Deadpool. And the connections between Cap, Wolverine, and Deadpool here are enticing. There's also a moment that goes down as Wade's most heartbreaking moment ever. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to start with this one, because it's gonna be a tearjerker, I think.
Number 6. Hulk Gang. Okay, this one is pretty weird. The Hulk Gang actually appears in a Wolverine comic as part of the Old Man Logan story arc. These guys rule over an area known as Hulkland and are basically hillbilly thugs. Seriously, they have trucker hats and everything, it's awful. The Hulk family is the product of Bruce Banner and She-Hulk, who is actually his first cousin, so yeah. They're basically thugs who drive around collecting rent money from the people unfortunate enough to live in the area. They cruise around in the Fantastic Car, a vehicle capable of splitting into 4 individual compartments affectionately called the Flying Bathtub. These guys have hilarious names like Billy Bob Banner and Bobby Joe Banner, and answer to the one and only Pappy Banner, godfather of the Trailer Park Hulk family. In the story, Logan kills most of the Hulk gang with his claws, later loading the Fantastic Car with explosives, and in a super epic scene, he is eaten by the Hulk, heals up inside of his stomach, and then cuts his way out, killing Banner. It's super bad, and he's like, "What's the matter, Banner? Something you ate?" It's great.
Number 5, The Bet. This is an Avengers story featuring the whole team, but is really funny when it comes to the Hulk's part in it all. Well, Hulk and Jessica Drew, really. This story in this issue out of Avengers Assemble is that Tony Stark makes a bet with Bruce Banner as to, between the two of them, which of their two teams can apprehend the villain and save the day first. I say teams, but they both really have more of a team up, as a lot of the other Avengers just prefer to stay out of this ridiculous bet and remain neutral parties. In the end, it's Jessica Drew and Hulk versus Iron Man and Thor. This story gives us a few great moments between Hulk and Spider-Woman, especially when we realize she agrees to be a part of his team because her pheromone powers actually allow her to influence the Hulk and sort of control him. At one point, she even gets him to make a sandwich for her, albeit a very messy sandwich because, yeah, it is the Hulk. You'll have to read the arc to see who wins the bet, but the beginning of the bet and the scene with the sandwich making starts in issue number 9 of Avengers Assemble Volume 2.
Alright, number 4, Incredible Hulk, The End. Now for more serious tone. This story takes us to the end of time, where the Hulk is the only thing left. After a violent war ending in a nuclear holocaust, all life on Earth is wiped out, except for the Hulk and some cockroaches. It's a tragic look at a haunting Marvel future, as Bruce interacts with a VidBot left behind to collect information on humanity's downfall. The VidBot informs him that he is literally the only one left, and at one point asks him if he would like to die. He spends the next few years wandering the ruins of old cities, remembering what once was, and eventually decides he does. Leaping from a building, his suicide is interrupted when he transforms into the Hulk in midair. The story eventually comes to a really tragic end, as Hulk, or Bruce Banner I should say, eventually has a heart attack, and in his dying moments, Banner pleads with the Hulk persona to let go, claiming they will be reunited with their friends in the afterlife, but Hulk refuses. Banner dies, and the Hulk still remains, slowly realizing that he will die when he returns to human form. Whoa.
Number 3, Mr. Fantastic versus the Incredible Hulk. This fight might be only a few pages long, but it's pretty bizarre and memorable. And it's gonna be a little bit more of a wacky funny than a super sad funny, like the last one. Super sad funny. Is that a thing? I don't know. But I feel like it is a little bit sometimes. This moment comes to us from the Contest of Champions number 2. Here we see Mr. Fantastic face off with the Incredible Hulk. Who will win? Likely the person that you expected, the Hulk. Reed may be brilliant, but his stretching powers are no match for the Hulk's lung capacity. Yes, you heard that right. For those who didn't know, one of Hulk's powers is breathing. We kind of talked about it a little earlier in his fight with Batman, but in essence he has such an expansive amount of lung capacity that it basically becomes like a superpower for him, allowing him to dive deep even on just one breath, and it gives him basically like super breath powers. It also means he does not need to breathe as often as other people, which is what ends up being the deciding factor in his fight against Mr. Fantastic, and ensures him the victory. While Mr. Fantastic attempts to suffocate Hulk wrapping around him, he takes in one big breath and actually inhales Reed Richards before he even has time to react. It's bizarre and hilarious, but also pretty great. While inhaled, Mr. Fantastic is super compressed because he was stretched at the time, and as such basically just passes out from suffocating while inside the Hulk's mouth.
Number 2, Professor Hulk. In Incredible Hulk Volume 1 in 1991, Bruce Banner is a man with multiple personalities at war with one another. Doc Samson is working to help the Hulk and puts Bruce in a deep hypnotic state in which the Grey Hulk and the Green Hulk fight against one another in Banner's mind. The two versions of the Hulk lead them to believe Banner is suffering from multiple personalities. Doc Samson helps Hulk merge his 3 personalities together, the third one being Bruce Banner, and they become this awesome dude known as Professor Hulk. Check out the bunny slippers. Sometimes referred to as Merged Hulk, this form was dominant for years, a mighty green Goliath with Bruce's intelligence and the confidence of Grey Hulk. The Professor believes this to be his final, true form, but unfortunately, he actually exists as a newly created 4th personality, and eventually he does fade away as Banner's mind becomes clouded and starts to deteriorate once again.
Number 1. The Incredible Hulk versus the Roller Disco Devils. This short one-page comic and fight comes to us from a Hostess Fruit Pies advertisement that was featured in various other issues of Marvel Comics from the mid-70s to the early 80s. In this story, Hulk faces the Roller Disco Devils, a street gang that love disco and love to pester the neighborhood with their overbearingly loud music. Those ruffians, as they skate around carrying boom boxes. How dare they? How dare they disturb the peace? It was because of the Roller Disco Devils that the children of the neighborhood were forced to stay inside and were unable to go out and buy Hostess Fruit Pies. Oh no! Fortunately, the Hulk showed up and made quick work of the ridiculous villains in this story, allowing the children to leave their apartments and enjoy their fruit pies. The short story and ad finished with the Hulk asking, "Why can't all humans be nice like Hostess Fruit Pies?" Friends, if it wasn't made apparent in Ultimate Universe, I think Hulk really wants more reasons to eat humans. I'm just saying. Comparing us to fruit pies? Wow. Number 10. Deadpool. There have been a few amazing writers when it comes to those that really understand the crazier than a sack of ferrets merc with a mouth known as Deadpool. But one of the best writers we've had recently is Gary Dugan, and one of the best series we've gotten in terms of art has been his 2012 series. This is the series where we got the good, the bad, and the ugly story featuring Deadpool's team up with Wolverine and Captain America. The series does a good job of making you laugh and embodying that outlandish Deadpool humor, while also sometimes being grounded in reality to a point that you just want to cry for what poor Wade Wilson is going through. It has this really great and raw, dark humor that just creeps in every now and then to really remind you who Deadpool is, which is kind of a sad guy. Poor Deadpool. Number 9. Captain Marvel. This Captain Marvel is definitely a series I'd recommend more for fans of the character. If you want a series to get you a little bit more invested, then the 2012 is more accessible for those that are new, but still want something fresh. However, for die-hard Carol Danvers fans, this series was perfect. It really puts Carol in her element usually being outer space. Carol Danvers currently seems to have a pretty good life going following the events of her last series at the beginning of this one, fighting crime alongside the Avengers and her partner War Machine aka Rhodey, and surrounded by those she loves. However, she realizes that she needs more. She needs to be out among the stars. And so this series is mostly about fun space adventures. But she also gets a few really awesome letters from home that allows us to visit her Earthling friends that we've come to love. Also, can we just talk about how much Kelly Sue DeConnick just completely hits the mark when it comes to writing Captain Marvel, because that is very much a thing. Ugh, I just love DeConnick's writing, she's awesome. Number 8. Thanos. Jeff Lemire and Donny Cates both brought their own stories to this series surrounding Marvel's big bad himself, Thanos. Both stories are excellent and unique and are just fairly neatly knit together. Lemire's Thanos starts off with a tale where we learn that Thanos is dying. With death finally on his doorstep, will Thanos surrender to his love or fight to live another day? The next arc follows a resilient Thanos, spoiler alert, he survives, conquering planets throughout the galaxy, but being called to face one of the greatest threats that the multiverse has ever faced: himself. Taken to the future by the hilarious and oddly charming new character of Cosmic Ghost Rider, Thanos then meets his future self, who has successfully obliterated almost all of life in the galaxy. Almost. In the story titled Thanos Wins by Donny Cates. Have I also mentioned just how gorgeous and vibrant the art and the colors are in this series? Because, yeah, they are. You should just read it for the colors. Just look at the colors are so good. Number 7. Black Panther. Ta-Nehisi Coates is a writer who has a background in hard-hitting journalism as well as being known as an accomplished author. And that was before he even made his way over to Marvel Comics. Needless to say, there was a lot of hype when it was announced that he would be taking over the Black Panther title. Fortunately, he did not disappoint. 2016's Black Panther series helped to completely revitalize this character. Coates' take was refreshing and relevant. He not only helped to create new, powerful, and interesting supporting characters, but also did an amazing job highlighting some of the conflicts that weren't always as often touched on, like that of politics and how the people of Wakanda feel about having a government that is a monarchy. If you love Black Panther, the 2016 run is a must read, and if you've never read any Black Panther, then this run is likely one that will pull you in and just make you want to know and read more.
Number 6. Suicide Kings. By Mike Benson, Sean Crystal, and Adam Glass, we find Wade taking on a job that ends up getting him in a heap of hurt. Because, well, of course. See, everybody is coming after Wade this time around, all over a crime that he didn't even commit. Who framed Wade? Perhaps it was the same person that hired Wade for this initial job in the first place. So mysterious. So this 5-parter keeps the twists coming. He has to play cat and mouse with some of Marvel's finest, like Spider-Man, Daredevil, and the Punisher. Plus, readers are also treated to Wade's behind-the-scenes visit to a controversial TV show called Pain Factor. And it's exactly what you would imagine. It's a great time. It's actually the comic that sparked the Marvel Red Team craze on Tumblr. Sorry, Punisher, you didn't make the cut. Dye your suit maybe, then we'll talk. Number 5. Hawkeye vs. Deadpool. Created by Duggan and Lawley, Hawkeye vs. Deadpool is a 5-part miniseries where we see the Avengers member Hawkeye and Deadpool cross paths during the spookiest season of the year. That's right, this picks up on Halloween in Brooklyn, and we have some stolen classified info that made its way to Wade's bag of candy. And then brainwashed guys come in dressed like superheroes to try and steal it back. So it's up to Wade, Clint, and Kate to keep the info away from Black Cat. Now, I know it's called Hawkeye vs. Deadpool, but it's really not about them fighting. I mean, besides the brief moments that they do. See, Jerry Duggan uses Matt Fraction's version of Hawkeye and Kate. That combined with an appearance of the ghost of Benjamin Franklin, well, we have a pretty solid Deadpool story. Super well written, good time. Number 4. With great power comes great coincidence. Kelly's run with Deadpool is praised by fans, so you'll hear her name a lot in this list. Starting with Volume 1, Issue 11. We open with The Watcher. There is an incident on Earth that requires their immediate attention. An elderly woman whose life is about to be disrupted by none other than Wade Wilson and his sidekick, Blind Al. The pair gets sent back in time, and so begins the discussions of avoiding the disruption of the flow of time. We got a lot of high stakes. So Wade disguises himself as Peter Parker, and Blind Al disguises himself as Aunt May. Now, I highly recommend reading Amazing Spider-Man issue 47 beforehand, because it's a lot of fun, trust me. Number 3, The Circle Chase. So back in 1993, Deadpool got his first ever miniseries, written by Fabian Nicieza, at a point where Wade has been featured regularly in the X-Force comics. And it's full of 90s goodness, even the way it's drawn, so 90s, so much fun. Just a lot in it. And it revolves around Deadpool and other baddies trying to recover this ultimate weapon left over after the death of Deadpool's old boss. And one after one, Deadpool is just kicking everybody's ass. While some of these stories are a bit heavier, if you're looking for a bloody good time full of laughs, the Circle Chase 4-parter is where you need to be. Number 2, Dead Reckoning. Deadpool Volume 1 issues 23 to 25. Dead Reckoning has said to be the real climax of Joe Kelly's run, and amped it up for Wade as a character as a whole. So this is where Kelly wanted to take the character all along. This shadow organization is convincing Wade that he will somehow be responsible for saving the world from the arrival of this alien being known as Tiamat. Its plans are to turn humanity into this slave race, and then we get to see Deadpool go from this gun for hire to become a hero for hire rather. And it's actually a really touching story. So Wade has to battle the ideas of his own free will in order to stop Tiamat from brainwashing the planet. It's like free will or eternal happiness. What'll it be, Wade? It's all on you, pal. And finally, number 1, Deadpool Sins of the Past. Released in 1994, the best year ever, written by Mark Waid, Sins of the Past is a 4-part story where the Juggernaut breaks into the facility Dr. Killebrew is working on Black Tom. So he rescues him, kidnapping Killebrew at the same time. And meanwhile, Wade is chilling at the bar. He's just having a good time by himself until Black Tom's men storm in and take him. So Banshee and Siren now have to help Wade. All the while, his healing factor isn't cooperating. So this is the first time we see a side to Deadpool where he's not necessarily a villain. He starts to become this anti-hero that we know and love. And we also get a first look at Wade without the mask on. And this is a big deal because we see his insecure side. Because when he meets Siren, he's afraid of how she'll treat him if she sees his face. And that's super important. That's a side to Wade we don't see often. This 4-parter has a lot of heart, tons of stabbing, and it's just a great time all the way through, easily taking our number 1 spot.
Number 10, Galactus. The thing to remember about the Ultimate Universe is one of its mission statements was to offer a different look at the Marvel world that was more grounded in reality. Well, there were a few things they were trying to do, but this was one of the things among them. They also wanted the Ultimate Universe to be a stark contrast to the main continuity, and it seemed to favor more of a gritty or edgy take on Marvel canon, and it aimed to eliminate the unapproachable elements of Marvel Comics by making sure stories weren't bogged down by years of established history and continuity for characters and events. Which means that when you go to a comic shop, anyone that walks into that comic shop can pick up an Ultimate comic and be like, I know what's happening. This is easy. When it came to Galactus though, the reason he really had to be changed is because the idea of a cosmic giant with a weird hat who eats worlds in the Ultimate Universe, it's kinda silly. It doesn't feel very grounded in reality, does it? Instead, they turned Galactus into Galactus, a drone army that devours worlds as a massive group of city-sized robots flying around space. Which honestly, it might also be more terrifying than the original version of this character. Galactus has since merged with the original villain of 616, Galactus or Galen, so now it does look like a giant Galen still, which is a little unfortunate, but this also made the entity more powerful between both worlds, so still pretty scary, even though now kind of ruined the whole, getting rid of the silliness look. It's what happens when the Ultimate Universe dissolves and is folded back into sort of the main continuity. Number 9. Sue Storm and Ben Grimm. Sue Storm and Ben Grimm aren't generally the most shipped couple in the Marvel Universe, but that simply might be because Reed Richards is in their way. In the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, one of the cutest and most endearing relationships is actually the one between the two FF members. Here, Reed still held a flame for Sue, but when he proposed to her following Ultimatum, Sue, instead of accepting like in 616, actually said, nah, I'm gonna pass on that. This was part of what really messed up Reed, but also helped to bring Ben and Sue even closer, allowing a romance between them to blossom. In the Ultimate Universe, Ben and Sue get married and they even have a daughter together. And friends, before we head on to our next spot, if you are loving this list and you're loving our content here on Top 10 Nerd, be sure to head on over to Facebook where you can follow us and where we'll have lots of fresh, cool things coming your way soon. So check it out so you're there first. Number 8. Death of Spider-Man. Well, the death of Spider-Man, the first time around, felt a little rough and brutal. When we took a second swing at it with Brian Michael Bendis building the narrative and giving it room to breathe, it actually ended up being one of the most powerful moments within the existence of the Marvel Ultimate Universe. Peter Parker as Spider-Man is a character you never expect to die, which is what makes it so shocking and painful when it happens, and it feels extremely permanent. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on your take, we would learn later on that Peter actually was able to survive thanks to his powers' ties to the Oz formula. Still, Peter would basically decide to keep his resurrection and secret immortality a secret, and pass the torch of Spider-Man officially on to Miles Morales, who in the Ultimate Universe, and now also in Earth 616, is also Spider-Man. Number 7. Kitty Pryde and Peter Parker. Kitty Pryde and Peter Parker on paper kinda seem like a weird couple, but in the Ultimate Universe they really worked well together. In fact, I think Peter might actually be one of my favorite picks for Kitty in terms of relationships that we've had so far. Although I'm still holding out for Magic. I'm still holding out for Illyana and Kitty to get together. Let's do it. Possibly, I actually like this relationship better than even that of Colossus and Kitty. At least that's my take. That's a very personal opinion, and I'm sure, it's a preference or not for folks. So if you out there are Colossus and Kate shipper, that's fine. You can do that too. Together, the pair not only had fun as teenagers, but they also teamed up to fight crime, which was pretty cool. Sadly, their relationship did not last forever, and the pair did break up after Peter realized that he really wanted to be with Mary Jane instead. Ugh. While he would also seemingly die young, Kitty would still remember him fondly even as she grew up, lingering on what could have been if they had stayed together. Although she'd never confess her thoughts and dreams about their hypothetical life together. She kept those to herself. So sad. Number 6. Venom. Donny Cates' work on the latest Venom series takes Eddie Brock's character to new heights. Cates' work on Venom has in fact been so good, many fans simply don't want it to end. We're just not ready. We're like, please, don't let this story ever end. It's so good. Of course, we know everything does have to come to an end eventually, but this has just really been some standout work when it comes to continuing to develop and evolve the character of Eddie Brock, while also staying true to his history. Of course, this book has also carried us through and to last summer's exciting, nail-biting, and horrific event that was number 5, Absolute Carnage. I mean, come on, you didn't think I was gonna do this list and not talk about it, right? Absolute Carnage was such a great series because it did a great job of bringing everyone together from the Spideyverse and beyond in a way that felt both epic and meaningful. It allowed us to take a look at what I like to call symbiote fever, which is a phenomenon that has been growing ever stronger since symbiotes and Venom first hit the scene. In the series, Venom, Spider-Man, and a slew of other supers must come together to defeat Absolute Carnage, a leveled up version of Cletus Cassidy who now finds himself resurrected and bonded to the Grendel symbiote, which has taken on a Carnage-like form and personality. Carnage is aiming to collect all of the codexes from the spines of those alive or dead who once wore/bonded with a symbiote. If he succeeds, Null will awaken and return to basically devour Earth. Yikes. How is Venom going to get out of this one? Well, you gotta read to find out. It's not really so much of a get out of, but I don't want to spoil anything. Number 4. Black Panther and the Crew. Black Panther and the Crew is a limited series written by Ta-Nehisi Coates and Yona Harvey, featuring art by Butch Gucci. Or Gooch. I don't know how to say that. Featuring art by Butch Gooch. Guice? How would you say that? Guice? Or Gucci? I want to say Gucci just because it sounds fun. I just like the way Butch Gucci sounds. I'm sorry if that's not right, Butch. Please, don't come at me. I'm sorry. This series follows Black Panther and other superhero colleagues who come together to solve a mystery in Harlem that seems to involve police brutality, which could echo outward into something bigger. The team of supers form a group known as the Crew in order to solve the mystery and to stop the villains behind it. The result is that you get an empowering, thrilling, and stunning story both to read and to look at. Ta-Nehisi Coates is also known for his amazing Black Panther series that we talked about earlier from 2016. If you just want something to wet your whistle when it comes to his work on Black Panther, then this is something I would recommend. It's only 6 issues and it's all really good. All the characters, including T'Challa, are also well and accurately written, which is not an easy feat to accomplish in a team book, especially Misty Knight. Goodness, Misty Knight is so well written in that book. I love it. Number 3. Hawkeye. Matt Fraction's Hawkeye is one of the most highly praised Hawkeye series around, and just series in general. If you've ever heard another comic nerd going on and on about Pizza Dog, this was also where that adorable doggo character originated, later named Lucky. Pizza Dog would later become Hawkeye's beloved animal companion for both Hawkeyes actually, both Clint Barton and the younger Kate Bishop. The story follows Hawkeye's adventures when he's not working alongside the Avengers team, and where his hero stories feel more grounded in reality, because at the end of the day, Clint's kinda just a dude. A super skilled dude when it comes to his accuracy with a bow and arrow, but still, just a dude. And honestly, it's that revelation which Fraction so beautifully explores, as well as David Aja's stunning artwork throughout most of the issues, that really makes the series so enjoyable. Number 2. Moon Knight. With talk of us getting Moon Knight in the MCU, you might be wondering just who is this mysterious character who looks like a less sensibly dressed Batman. If you are thinking that, then I'm assuming you have yet to read this amazing series, which had more than one talented writer tell Moon Knight's story throughout, including writing from Cullen Bunn, Brian Wood, and Warren Ellis. It also features artwork from the talented Declan Shalvey and Greg Smallwood, with bold colors from one of my favorites, Jordi Belair, and striking letters by Travis Lanham, to name a few, because there's more talented people that worked on it. Just all in all, it's a great creative team that even while rotating out still manages to keep a consistent feel throughout the book. Moon Knight is Mark Spector, a former mercenary with a split personality disorder who is given powers by Khonshu, the Egyptian moon god. Moon Knight as such serves Khonshu, at least we think he does, and he thinks he does. This series is critically acclaimed due to how well it deals with the question of Spector's mental state, and paces out the storytelling in a way to also kind of make you as the reader question reality yourself. Who doesn't want to question reality, am I right? Number 1. House of X / Powers of X. Here we are again, almost in present day, 2019. House of X and Powers of X were technically 2 separate series that came out last year, both limited, running 6 issues each. However, the series was married together for the purposes of trade, so if you were looking at getting a paperback or perhaps even a hardcover version of one of these series, which I do recommend getting the hardcover, you'll notice they only come together. But trust me when I say you'll likely want both of them, especially if you're diving into any of the other series that are part of the Dawn of X line. Jonathan Hickman is currently the main mastermind behind Dawn of X, and House and Powers of X serve to introduce readers to this new mutant world that Hickman is building, with the triumvirate powers of Moira McTaggart, Professor X, and Magneto founding it. If you haven't read it, you need to. It's not only pretty, but powerful, and it will get you excited about this new line by breathing much needed life into the X-Men and mutant world.
And speaking of knowledge, let's get counting. Number 10. Marvel's Lifeline.
One of the best things about the Ultimate line was what it did for Marvel as a company and a publisher. It provided a lifeline to Marvel at a time when it needed it the most. The comics industry bubble that once had made collectibles so valuable had burst. The hype and demand of the early 90s had vanished completely, leaving Marvel with tons of comics printed that would simply not sell. With the demand gone and production costs putting them into the red, Marvel was forced to sell off licenses to some of their best characters. This is how Sony got the rights to Spider-Man and how Fox got the rights to X-Men. And it's what prompted Marvel to change things up and create the Ultimate Universe. The Ultimate Universe was meant to be something fresh and new, free of continuity and ultimately more gritty, realistic, and with an edge. Amazingly, the new line of Ultimate Comics did well. So well that it provided Marvel with the stability it needed to recover. Without the Ultimate line, it's possible that we might not have the Marvel stories, animated series, films, or comics of today. That's how successful and important Ultimates was. Number 9. The Inhumans. I've said it before and I will say it again, I think the design of the Inhumans is much better on Earth 1610. They look more compelling and intimidating. Nothing against the 616 Inhumans, who I also like just fine, but I actually want to get to know these Inhumans more. Overall, I think the Ultimate Inhumans are a little more interesting than their main continuity counterparts. Number 8. No previous continuity. One of the best things that the Ultimate Universe and line offered readers was a fresh start, meaning that years and years of comic book history didn't really apply here. The idea was you didn't have to know what had gone on in the past or what was going on currently in the comics to just jump into a book, with comic book continuity being a concept that many new readers still find daunting today. This was freeing for consumers because it meant you could buy in without having to worry about potentially being confused because something from 20 years prior came up that you needed to understand in order to know what was really going on in the story. This wasn't the case for Earth 1610. At least, it wasn't the case to begin with. Freedom from continuity meant more creative freedom for writers, but unfortunately, Ultimates really only started as new reader accessible, but quickly became bogged down with intricate storytelling and details. It even ended up having retcons as well, which might confuse readers jumping in later on, with the first Ultimate Iron Man series being so out there that Marvel decided to retcon it out of existence, instead turning it into a ridiculous anime show set in the same universe, but that wasn't actually considered to be the true story of Iron Man. So that comic basically became like non-canon. Number 7. Sue and Reed splits. Finally, this reality is one where Sue seems to be more aware that Reed can never really fully commit to her. He proposes right before Ultimatum goes down and they are faced with a giant wave as a result. Sue manages to push the wave back but slips into a comatose state as a result, prompting Reed to go out looking to punish the villains and abandoning Sue, leaving her with the Thing, aka Ben Grimm. In the Ultimate Universe, Reed and Sue actually don't end up together in the end. In fact, Sue, after she's revived, finds out about a sinister plot of Reed's, realizing that he has become a villain. Ben attempts to try and explain how Reed could just be up to something that they both don't fully understand, but Sue is over making any more excuses for him, implying that she never wanted to marry him to begin with. In fact, Sue and Ben actually end up together, with Reed becoming a villain. For some reason, I actually find this to be just a better fit for these two characters, just in terms of their overall paths. As much as they've had some pretty sweet moments together on Earth 616, the couple has also had major problems over the years that sometimes seem just to get swept under the rug so that we can try to keep them together without any resolution of those problems. This, however, provides us with some resolution and consequence for those moments, and it kind of addresses some of them, which I like. Just feels a little more realistic. Number 6. Thor. Thor is another fascinating take on a character we feel we know so well. Although in the end, Thor did turn out to be Thor Odinson, son of Odin, who was made to forget his true identity on Earth. For a good while, we weren't so sure that was the case. Also, saying Thor Odinson, son of Odin, is such a weird thing to say because you're kind of saying Thor, son of Odin, son of Odin. The reason why we were so eager to believe that, hey, maybe Thor isn't actually Thor, is that the Ultimate Universe was touted and marketed as being a fresh take and less bogged down continuity-wise to that of Earth 616 and their characters. So we were like, hey, maybe they are reinventing this status quo. Thor initially appeared to be a delusional man who believed he was Thor, but was kinda out of his mind. For his power, he heavily relied on weaponry and his suit to produce thunder and lightning, which allowed him to appear godlike. However, in the end, we learned that Thorleif Goldman really was Thor Odinson, but had been manipulated into forgetting his true identity more clearly. The character design alone here is enough to make Ultimate Thor one of my favorite things about this universe. Number 5. The Spider-Men meet. For many years, Marvel did their best to keep Ultimate completely separate from Earth 616, but eventually, the inevitable crossover between the worlds had to happen. We all knew eventually it would come around. The really cool thing about this though, it brought together Earth 616 Spider-Man Peter Parker with Miles Morales' Spider-Man from Earth 1610. Not only that, but Peter would also get to learn about his own seemingly unfortunate fate in this reality and cross paths once more with a living Gwen Stacy, who in the Ultimate Universe dies but is reborn again thanks to the lab-created being which killed her in the first place, Carnage. And for a time she even gets to be Carnage, which I thought was pretty cool. Short-lived though. Number 4. Colossus' secret. Colossus and Kitty don't end up together like how they do in the main continuity. Instead, Colossus is revealed to have a secret here when it comes to his sexual identity. Turns out the Colossus vs 1610 is actually gay. The challenge of him living as a closeted gay man makes him an even more interesting character in the Ultimate Universe, adding another layer of what it can be like to feel other, in addition to Colossus already being a mutant, so that's a huge part of his backstory as well. Colossus does get outed, but considering how masculine of a character he is, and how burly, he also provides a more diverse look when it comes to how gay men are usually depicted in mainstream comics. There are some that are burly, but definitely not enough. I feel like we need to diversify that a little bit. Number 3. Kitty Pryde leads the X-Men. I am a big Kitty Pryde fan, as you may have garnered from all my time spent hyping the current heroic Marauders mutant team, and Kate's place as their leader. Not to mention her new look as well. I am here for it. When it comes to Ultimate, she's another character who does not disappoint us. Even after her teenage years, which were pretty fun with her dating and fighting crime alongside Spider-Man, which we talked about earlier, Kitty becomes somehow even cooler and definitely a lot tougher. After the devastating and earth-shattering events of Ultimatum, Kitty would go on to become the leader of the surviving mutant nation and the leader of the X-Men team besides. At least the X-Men who choose to stay with her and follow her as a leader. Of which, were I an Ultimate Universe mutant, I would be one of. I would be here to join Kitty's team. Definitely. For sure. Let's also acknowledge that Kitty becomes the leader after she has lost almost everything in the wake of Ultimatum, losing many friends and loved ones who were closest to her. Kitty is strong. Number 2. The creation of the Maker. One of my all-time favorite characters that we've gotten from the Ultimate Universe has to be the Maker. The Maker is one of the best villains within and without Earth 1610, as he happens to be one of the few characters who made the move over from 1610 to Earth 616 after that universe was seemingly destroyed. That's how you know he's cool. Although don't worry, the Maker does appear to be working to restore the Ultimate Universe and has since brought that world back. What's even more wild is that initially the Maker was none other than hero and leader of the Fantastic Four, Reed Richards, proving just how rewarding and refreshing it can be to try something totally different with an established and widely predictable character. Also, I feel like I like Reed better as a villain. I feel like I like his Ultimate Universe counterpart better. Is that a hot take? I don't know. I don't think so. I think a lot of people feel this way. Number 1. Miles Morales unmasks. One of the greatest characters we've gotten out of the Ultimate Universe, other than the Maker obviously, has to be Miles Morales. He also happens to be one of the few characters who has stood the test of time when it comes to surviving the destruction of his home universe, reality of Earth 1610. Instead of dying with many of the other residents of the Ultimate Universe, Miles ended up being saved and even returned once more on Earth 616, where he was permanently moved to after the events of Secret Wars. I mean, come on. You know you're cool when you get moved from an alternate reality to the main one, just to save you and your family. Miles unmasking was a huge moment for Marvel as they introduced us to a biracial Spider-Man who is not only a stand-up hero, but is also just a really solid character all of his own, as opposed to being a carbon copy of Peter Parker's Spider-Man, which I feel like there's gonna be some people in the comments who are gonna be like, I think he is a carbon copy, but I really don't think he is. I think Miles has a lot of different stuff going on. It's definitely not usually as negative as Peter. No offense, Peter, still love you. Number 10. Miles Morales Spider-Man. Miles Morales' new series as Spider-Man is already being hyped by fans. Now, it's only got 2 issues out thus far, but fans are already loving Cody Ziegler and Federico Vincentini's take on the character. Some are even saying this is some of the best work, if not the best work, that Vincentini has ever done. I personally love Miles as a character, and I was honestly sad to see his last run by Saladin Ahmed come to a close, but hearing all the buzz around the newest series now just makes me really excited to see what this next chapter holds for Miles in both his personal life and his crime fighting career. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love all things Spider-Man, Miles, Peter, Ben, all the Spider people, folks, Jessica Drew, there's a lot of Spider-Man stuff. Be sure to check out our Spider-Man playlist, where we have all of the good Spidey content for you. Number 9, Captain Marvel. This is a series I have been wanting to read for some time, and it's only been bolstered by the fact that I've only really heard great things about the comic and the fact that it's gone on for so long, which is usually a good indicator in terms of when you're deciding whether or not you should buy a comic or get into it. If it's got a long run, it usually means other people are buying it and loving it, so that's a good sign. The other thing I will say is anytime I have popped into this comic, because I have read a little bit of it here and there, bits of issues, I've loved everything I've read, so yeah. Captain Marvel follows the journey of Carol Danvers, both in space and on Earth. It is written by Kelly Thompson, who I also will say I generally love everything that she writes, and has gone on for 45 issues thus far, with solicitations actually taking it till at least issue number 48. And I believe we can go till at least issue 50 with this one. I mean, 100 issues though of Captain Marvel would also be insane. So if we could do that, I'd be here for that. I love Carol, so. Number 8, Star Wars Yoda. Star Wars Yoda is a comic that I would heavily recommend people read. I just finished the first story arc myself with issue number 3, that sort of arc comes to a close, and I loved it. I'm not sure if Yoda has ever had a comic before, but based on what I know, he hasn't. Kind of tried to look into it a bit and I couldn't find anything. Granted, I'm not as immersed in the world of Star Wars comics as I would like to be, so I could be wrong about that. However, I have wanted to get more into Star Wars comics for some time, and so far this has proven to be a series that I would recommend as a good and semi-familiar place to start for those of you that also want to jump into something. We all know Yoda, but what we don't know is about all the insane adventures he's gone on during his life, which is what this series dives into as Yoda reminisces on his past while living on Dagobah, waiting for Luke to one day arrive. Star Wars Yoda is by Cavan Scott with art by Nico Leone. Also, I know Marvel is not the only one to have ever done Star Wars comics, so if there are any Yoda comic series that existed prior to this one, please let me and all of us know in the comments, because I would love to check them out if they do exist and I somehow missed them in my research. Number 7, Wasp. This is a character I've been talking about for a while in regards to wondering where her main series was at. I mean, Wasp has had series, but a lot of them tend to be team-up series with, you know, Ant-Man. Or just, where is Wasp in general, I guess I should say. I feel like we haven't seen Jan for some time in the comics, and it's weird, especially considering that, you know, she was once, for a long while, a core member, and of course, one of the founding members of the Avengers team. In fact, Jan even led the Avengers for some time as well. The last I spotted Jan was in the current She-Hulk series, and even there, she was just making a cameo. I remember when she showed up, I was like, wait, where has Jen been? Huh? She also doesn't have a team up with Jen or anything. She's just helping Jennifer out with finding an apartment while Jen focuses on landing back on her feet and getting her own place. Also, how is Jen and Jan not a team up series that has happened yet? Or has it happened and I somehow missed it? Cause that kinda sounds like a great idea for a team up series. Wasp, however, is finally back in a series where she also gets to team up with the inheritor of her mantle, long lost daughter of Hank Pym, aka Ant-Man, Nadia. I also believe this is Janet Van Dyne's first ever solo series, which is wild to me, although even here she's sharing the series with Nadia, so there is that. Wasp not only has amazing covers from Tom Riley, but also is written by Out of This World writer Al Ewing with art by Kate Niemczyk. The only sad news here is that it's only a 4-part miniseries. And who knows, it could always lead to a longer running series, or it could get an extension and become a longer running series, so fingers crossed. Number 6, Nick Fury. Another great thing that the Ultimate Universe gave us was a new Nick Fury that was so successful he actually became the new version of Nick Fury in the main continuity, and inspired the MCU version of the character as well. Hilariously enough, Samuel L. Jackson's likeness inspired the redesign of the character. Fury would even acknowledge that Jackson would be his top pick to play him in a movie. The story goes that originally Samuel L. Jackson was actually not too happy about Marvel using his likeness without really asking him him or without any compensation or conversation about it, but when he contacted them, they actually apologized and offered him the role of Nick Fury in any future films. Jackson supposedly was appeased and accepted the offer. And the rest, they say, is history. Today, I personally cannot imagine the MCU without him. Number 5, Death. Wait a minute, Amanda, didn't you just cite death as being a bad thing on your worst list? Yes, I did. We were talking about Ultimatum. But that was more death for the sake of death, not death in general. I actually enjoy when characters die. Well, I don't enjoy when they die, but more that I enjoy the finality that death invites. I like death as consequences, but more than that, I like the higher stakes that it gives us. If anyone at any point can die, it means that everything is more exciting because, they might not make it back from that mission. Their actions carry more weight because there's a real risk that they face. When characters can die, it also means stories get to end. And with endings come new and exciting beginnings. Number 4, The Maker. Talk about unique spins on characters. The Maker definitely offered us a completely different take on Reed Richards, one that was more modern and actually felt like it kind of fit better, not just within the world, but within a more current day and age. I think a huge issue with the Fantastic Four that we see when it comes to adapting that team to sort of a film setting in the modern day is that the heroes are kind of stiff. They're definitely a product of the time period in which they were created, a perfect and kind of wholesome family unit. The Ultimate Universe shattered that expectation, broke up the Fantastic Four team, and gave us the amazing villain that is the Maker, a version of Reed Richards whose love and dedication to science actually makes him a horrifying, immoral, pretty much mad scientist type, if a mad scientist could somehow also be disturbingly sane and logical. The Maker is one of the best villains to have ever existed in comics in general, not even just within the confines of the Ultimate Universe, which of course the Maker would also literally break free from in the comics. Number 3, Ultimate Spider-Man. Although there were many problems when it came to the continuity of the Ultimate Universe, the Spider-Man series was not one of them. In fact, Ultimate Spider-Man was more celebrated for being a breath of fresh air that remained consistently coherent throughout. To this day, it remains some fans' favorite Spider-Man comic series, period, and not just one of their favorite series within the Ultimate Universe. Some even hold this series above any of the Spider-Man main continuity stuff. Why was the Spider-Man series so good from Ultimates? It had a sense of finality, and it wasn't wishy-washy. It committed, it followed through, it offered fresh new takes on characters, and whether or not you loved all of those new takes, you had to respect them. Most of those changes were made to make Spider-Man's stories and characters feel more grounded, more realistic. Peter also returned to high school, which a lot of fans enjoyed because they felt it was younger Peter, Spider-Man in high school, that was kind of his most relatable version. So taking him back there felt really good. Number 2, Miles Morales. One of the greatest things to come out of Ultimate Spider-Man as well, the story and character of Miles Morales, whom we've all come to love very dearly. What's more, Peter's apparent death also paved the way for Miles, allowing him to step into the spotlight as Spider-Man, and even take over. Even after we learned that Peter Parker had actually survived as well and wasn't actually dead due to the Oz formula making him virtually immortal, he still decided to pass the torch to Miles. He'd had his time as a hero, now it was Miles' turn. I just love how the story goes. I love that Miles truly got to be the one and only Spider-Man on Earth 1610. And while I love Peter, I kind of hope we get to see Miles step into the spotlight as the one and only Spider-Man at some point on Earth 616 too. Or bring back a world where he is the one and only Spider-Man. Number 1, the MCU. The Ultimate line is what helped to pave the way for the MCU, and in fact provided much needed inspiration for the cinematic universe. There are many characters from Earth 1610 who have influenced their Earth 199999 counterparts. That is, their Marvel Cinematic Universe counterparts. Not only have characters from the Ultimate Universe found their way to the big screen through the MCU, but stories from the Ultimate line have also served to inspire some of those told to us in the films.
Kicking off the list at number 10, what if the Fantastic Four had not gained their superpowers? Okay, the Fantastic Four, the FF, they got their powers when they were on a space mission, and all of a sudden cosmic radiation entered the chat. Powers were given to them all at the same time, each obtaining a hint of the elements. But what if this space mission didn't go south? What if that cosmic storm didn't get past the spaceship's shielding? Well, afterwards, the rocket group, that's what they're called after, becomes the highest ranking space industry, so even without powers, they're still awesome. But when Mole Man's monsters come along to attack, the team still comes out on top because science always wins. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be so great. It helps the channel out a lot. Or if you want to hit subscribe, our faces will pop up on your feed. How lovely is that? Number 9. What if Spider-Man had rescued Gwen Stacy? Yes, okay, I remember sitting in the theater watching The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is so underrated as a movie. Side note, it gets way too much for some reason. But when Gwen was falling in the clock tower, I held my breath. I knew what was gonna happen, and to this day, it's one of the saddest scenes in a comic book film. So this what if certainly helped ease that pain. Issue 24 shows us a world where he caught Gwen, and after that, it's beautiful. He proposes, he reveals his identity to her, and on top of that, Harry and Norman reunite. They work it out. All of the wins, look at this. And then when Peter and Gwen do get married at the ceremony, they're doing the cha-cha slide, which I personally love doing. But then J. Jonah Jameson bursts in with a bunch of police officers with footage that reveals Peter Parker as Spider-Man. So at this point, Peter was forced to run for the rest of his life to protect the ones that he loved. I had you in the first half. I know I did. These what ifs are mostly sad. Number 8. What if the Phoenix had not died? Issue 27 of What If again shows us a brighter future. Well, at least it starts that way. In this alternate reality, Jean didn't die. She was actually reborn again, and then when the X-Men have to take on Galactus and Terrax in the Shi'ar Galaxy, she uses that Phoenix Force to get the job done. She puts an end to Galactus, which sounds great on paper, but the Phoenix Force starts to amplify and get a little bit more and more out of control. So she accidentally destroyed a small star and other asteroids, and when she returns to the X-Mansion, she's now in hot water for destroying yet another star. Shadowcat is not pleased, so Jean turns into the Dark Phoenix and takes out Shadowcat, and Polaris, and Cyclops, and also planet Earth, and then shortly after consumes the universe. That escalated quickly, wow. Number 7. What if the Punisher was a hall monitor? Dipping into a more comedic side of things because the last two were just straight tragic, the Punisher as a hall monitor. Short and sweet, and it couldn't get any better. He's watching the halls in a quiet, generic grade school in a typical town in USA. You can find this in Volume 2, Issue 34. It's pretty intense. I mean, it goes for the comedic take, but Frank Castle being Frank Castle in front of any children? That's a nightmare. They thought they were off the hook at the beginning of the issue. The kids reiterate the fact that the Hulk is no longer watching these halls, so they're fine. So once the Punisher sends them to the principal's office after getting caught, the last panel we see is the Hulk in the principal's chair now. It's a short one, but the idea is actually terrifying and hilarious all at the same time. Poor kids. I thought my principal was scary. I thought Mr. Hubert was scary. No, the Hulk is a bit more scary. A bit, just a little bit.
Number 6. Venom. Venom is so wonderfully weird right now, and I mean that in like the best way possible. It's gotten really elevated in terms of the, I would say, existential crises that Eddie Brock and even Dylan Brock seem to be experiencing. If you are a Venom fan, if you have been following along with the King in Black event, the Absolute Carnage event, and Donny Cates' run on Venom, then this series really is for you. It continues along that path with, I would say, pretty great reverence, I think, for what has come before, but it also offers us a glimpse at something weirdly dark and different through the eyes of writers Al Ewing and Ram V, who both offer their own takes on the two characters that we have come to know as Venom, both Eddie and now his son, Dylan. Number 5. Immortal X-Men. Immortal X-Men is one of those series that you really you need to read it, especially if you want to be truly in touch with all the wild stuff that is happening with the X-Men right now. Truthfully, my first draft in terms of my picks for this list were pretty much all X books, probably no surprise to anybody. Like 70% of what my initial picks were for this list prior to me tweaking it were just straight up just X books. But after removing a few to give you a more balanced list in terms of recommendations, Immortal X-Men was one that I simply had to keep on here because, I mean, it's just that good. Now, this isn't even one of the books that I personally have been following along with issue to issue. It's not on my personal pull list. My partner is reading it, but has been keeping me informed, and I do pop in every now and then on an issue, and honestly, every time I do pop into it, I am in love with what I read. It is so good. Kieran Gillen and Lucas Wernick are both crushing it on Immortal X-Men, and these covers by Mark Brooks are jaw-dropping. jaw-dropping. Read it or else miss out on all this mutant magic that's so good. Not actual magic, but you know, just like chef's kiss magic. Number 4, She-Hulk. What can I say? I made a promise to keep only one comic between Marvel and DC on my pull list for this year as I attempt to focus more on collecting and supporting indie comics, part of a New Year's resolution of mine, and She-Hulk was almost the one that I simply had to keep. It was a really hard decision for me to not keep this comic on my pull list because I love it so much. It really feels like a return to the classic She-Hulk many of us first fell in love with in the comics. She's sassy, she's playful, she's fun-loving, hardworking, and she can also easily kick your butt. Like, this is my favorite version of She-Hulk. It's so good. She-Hulk came out swinging with writing by Rainbow Rowell and extremely consistent artwork from various talented artists throughout, and reminds me once more why I love the Jade Giantess. And even though I'm not reading it physically right now, you can bet I'm going to be continuing to read it digitally because it is super good and it deserves my support. And you should join me in reading in whichever format you prefer as well. Just trust me. Number 3, Fantastic Four. I mean, when they said that Ryan North was going to be doing FF, I had to start reading and collecting it. I love Ryan North, also, woo, other Canadian. Alas, because of my current commitment to really focusing on only collecting indie comics this year, as one of my New Year's resolutions as I was saying earlier, I'm not collecting this one physically anymore. But I'm still planning to read along digitally, and based on the tone I got in the first issue, I know this is going to be a great run. Although it does hurt me to not grab those stunning covers by Alex Ross off the shelves. And not just on the covers, the inside art by Ivan Coelho and design elements by Carlos Lau are also phenomenal. I think to really get a sense for this series, I'll simply share some of Ryan North's thoughts on the FF, which he writes about on the final page of his issue number 1. There were 4 guiding lights I had in mind for the Fantastic Four, and I put them at the top of the very first document I sent our fearless editor Tom Brevoort. They went a little something like this. Number 1, the Fantastic Four are fun. These are people who know they can help people and are here to do exactly that. No angst, having superpowers rules. Number 2, the Fantastic Four are adventurers. Exploring the unexplored is fun and gratifying. The unknown and the impossible are crazy interesting. Number 3, the Fantastic Four can do anything. If we want to recapture the feeling of the FF as they were in the 60s where anything could happen, we have to let what's come before be there to inspire stories but not limit them. Number 4, the Fantastic Four are accessible. This is a comic for people who've read every Fantastic Four appearance since 1961, but it's also one that welcomes people who have never read a single Fantastic Four comic before, or even a single Marvel comic. We have deep cut references to what's come before, but you won't feel left out if you don't know it, because this is a comic for everyone. Number 2, Sins of Sinister. Sins of Sinister is an event I have been eager to witness since almost the birth of Krakoa. Man, I'm gonna miss Krakoa when it's gone. Oof. Ever since Sinister was plotting on gathering all the samples of mutant DNA that he most wanted, I've been eager to see what master plan he has in store. While in Hellions, his Chimera was born, revealed, and sadly destroyed, now he's going even bigger with his ambitions. Not just trying to create something that is extremely powerful, but actually trying to harness others' powers in order to bend reality to his very will, which I gotta say is pretty wild. Sins of Sinister is an event with multiple tie-ins for you to check out and enjoy, but it also has its own self-titled issue as well, and a follow-up denouement series, Sins of Sinister, and a follow-up denouement issue, Sins of Sinister Dominion. The event is written by Kieran Gillen, who, as I already mentioned, is killing it on Immortal X-Men right now. Also, this event is massive when it comes to art, with so many artists involved, including David Baldion, Federico Vincentini, Joshua Cassara, and Stefano Caselli, among others. Number 1, Demon Wars. Demon Wars comes to us from writer and artist Peach Momoko with translation and contributions by Zach Davison. Peach Momoko is one of Marvel's Stormbreakers, younger artists and creatives that Marvel seeks to showcase and promote throughout their comics. For those of you who haven't checked it out, Demon Days was the previous series that Momoko did, which I honestly also fell in love with, and which precedes this. Also, Momoko's art is like some of the best art I think ever. It's so good. While I would recommend reading Demon Days prior to reading Demon Wars, I would also say that you could probably read Demon Wars without it if you really wanted to, and you would still enjoy and appreciate the story that Momoko and Davison are telling us here. The coolest thing about the Demon books, though, is that it is set in its own alternate universe of Peach's creation. To give us this beautiful and mysterious world, Momoko has taken inspiration from Japanese folklore and blended it together with the superpowered beings and stories, mutants especially, of Marvel's universe. While Demon Wars started in late 2022, it will likely wrap earlier this year in 2023. Although honestly I want it to go on forever. It takes a while in between issues though, so you gotta be a bit patient, but it's worth it.